Thank you, Carlos. We're going to talk to Donald Rainwater tonight, and we're going to talk to him about a lot of different things. Oh, there I am. It is now about 21 days and 5 hours until Election Day. This has been quite an exciting time for the Rainwater campaign. Donald has been all over the state. We have raised about $250,000, much more than our Democratic opponent, and we are spending that money on TV ads, on radio spots, on virtual advertising, on everything that we could do to get Donald's name out in front of the public and in front of voters. This is the first evening that we've had a chance to get together with people and given them the ability to ask questions of Donald Rainwater, the Libertarian Party candidate for governor of Indiana. We will begin that shortly, but first I'd like to give Donald this chance to greet all the people on this call and across the country, since this is being broadcast. Our Carlos at Rogue Media all over the country on the internet. And Donald, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Pardon me. As you probably already know, my name's Donald Rainwater, and I am the Libertarian candidate for governor here in the state of Indiana. I am a lifelong Hoosier. I'm a 1981 graduate of Warren Central High School in Indianapolis. I am an 8-year veteran, enlisted veteran of the United States Navy. I've spent about the last 20 years in software engineering, about the last 7 or 8 years in software engineering management and project management. And so now I am obviously running for governor of the state of Indiana. I appreciate all of you taking time out of your busy schedule to attend and participate in this event. I look forward to answering a lot of your questions, and hopefully we will get an opportunity to do this again prior to Election Day so that we can answer even more questions at that time. With that, Sam, please go ahead, and we'll go ahead and jump right in if you're ready.
I am ready, Donald. We received, just for the people in the audience information, about 85 to 90 questions from people all over the state of Indiana. They were asked to submit them in writing by this afternoon at noon. Many of them are duplicates, so I've taken the liberty of arranging some of them into just general categories of questions, things that have come up in the campaign, issues that Donald has spoken about quite often. So we're going to start off with a really easy one, Donald. Question number 42 from Jeremy of White County. I take that back from Todd of an unknown county, is what will be your first order of business once you receive the keys to Indiana?
Well, the first thing that we're going to do as soon as the inauguration is over is we're going to go to the members of the Indiana General Assembly, and we're going to ask them to retract the power that they have previously given to the governor in a state of emergency. In 2003 and then again in 2008, the Indiana General Assembly saw fit to give broad powers to the governor in an emergency and did not require the governor to call a special session of the General Assembly if it was not already in session. I believe the first thing we need to do is make that change where the governor cannot unilaterally, for a period of 6 or 8 or 9 months, issue executive orders and legislate without the legislature in session. So that will be the first thing that we do.
Good.
Thank you, Donald. We're going to go on to a couple broad categories in the area of taxes. The first question in the area of taxes comes from, in fact, the first two come from Monty of Allen County. Monty asks, if I understand you correctly, you're proposing that individual state income and residential property taxes be eventually eliminated in Indiana. Would you propose this be instituted immediately or in a multi-step process?
And you said that was from Monty, correct?
Monty, yes.
So Monty, that's a great question. And a lot of people have asked, how are you going to replace that revenue? And the reality is we're not going to reduce taxes first. That would be irresponsible. What we need to do on actually part 2 of day 1 is we need to go in and we need to identify all of the regulations, statutes, and processes and practices that were suspended in state government during the pandemic. Because I believe that if you don't need it in an emergency, you don't need it. And so with that in mind, I believe that it's very important that we take any of the regulations that were suspended during the pandemic and we look at permanently removing them. Step 2 will be to bring together a group of volunteer financial experts, CPAs, to help us do a forensic audit on the state budget. Because what we really need to do is take a fine-tooth comb, line by line, and start identifying in all the 50-some state agencies where we have duplicative, underperforming, or underutilized programs where we can either consolidate, merge, or eliminate things that the citizens aren't getting benefit from. And as we start to reduce the size and scope of state government and we eliminate the fraud, waste, and abuse, then we will be able to start reducing taxes to the point where we can eliminate the state individual income tax and eliminate the personal property tax. Now, when we do that, a lot of people ask me, and I'm sure this would be a follow-up, well, you know, those taxes are used to pay for X. How would you pay for X? And the reality is that the Indiana General Assembly has the authority and the ability and has used it repeatedly to reallocate funding from where it was intended to where they want it to go. So we would obviously ask the General Assembly to reallocate funds from unnecessary spending to the places where the spending really needs to be done in order to provide the best possible services to the citizens of Indiana.
Thank you, Don. Quick answer. And that kind of took care of Monte's second question as well. There was one more on property taxes I wanted to ask you to address. With your proposal of eliminating income and homestead property taxes, what is then the plan for commercial and industrial taxes? And that comes from Virgil of Noble County.
Well, Virgil, again, that's a great question. And for the time being, what we want to do is we want to focus on the individual. We want to focus on the citizens of the state of Indiana and giving tax relief to the citizens of the state of Indiana. One of the reasons I think that is important is because if you look at, for example, the economic crisis that we currently find ourselves in, we've had over 1 million people have to file for unemployment since March 1st. Countless small business owners have had their businesses closed only to not be able to reopen them. And so what we need to do is focus on invigorating the economy in a way that reestablishes the small business, the family farmer, and the individual as that foundation of our economy. And the best way that I know to do that is to give tax relief to the family farmer, the individual, and the small business owner who pays most of his business taxes through his individual taxes. So we want to focus on that first. And once we get that back on track, and I hate to use that phrase because somebody else uses it and probably abuses it a little bit, but once we get moving forward in a productive way and get that foundation underneath of us, then we can start looking at additional tax relief.
Thank you, Don. Let's go on to another question, and this is important to the Libertarian Party as a whole and to your run as governor of Indiana. Kenneth of Clark County asks, so-called experts are predicting that you will not even receive 10% of the vote on election day. What would you say to people who argue that the third-party candidate cannot win and are concerned that a vote for you only serves to aid whoever their least favorite candidate is, be it Myers or Holcomb?
Well, first of all, let's talk about polls. And I was actually, before we started this evening, I recorded an interview with Abdul Hakim Shabazz for his show on Saturday. And he asked me a similar question about what polling do I believe is most accurate. And as a software engineer and somebody who has spent the last 20 years working with data, reporting on data, doing data analytics, I can tell you that polling data are percentages called metrics dated on, based on data that creates those metrics by having two measurements that are compared to get that percentage. Well, if you're not going to show me the underlying data, I'm not going to trust your percentages. And the poll that had us at 24%, they can show us the underlying data that proves how they got those percentages. These polls that people are touting that have us at 6 or 8%, they don't provide the underlying data, which makes me wonder, where did they get those percentages and why won't they show us the data? Very similar to the issue that we have with COVID-19 data from government. Show us all the data, not just some of it, not just the data you want to use to scare us into doing what you want us to do, which is what I think some of this polling data is. It's an attempt to scare you into not using your vote the way you want to, but the way someone else wants you to.
Thank you, Donald. The next question concerns something that's been in front of us since early this spring. It's from Jeremy of White County, and I'm going to ask you to expand on this just a little bit. In addition to Jeremy's question here, if you would address just your ideas of how the situation has been addressed by the governor on the COVID pandemic. Jeremy's question specifically is, I do not support a mask mandate by government. However, I do support private companies and businesses choosing to require masks inside or on their properties. I see a grocery requiring a mask just the same as requiring you to wear pants. It is their choice. As governor, will Mr. Rainwater support private businesses running their businesses as they see fit?
Well, so first of all, let me address the question at the end of that very directly. I believe that business owners have the right to decide what is right and best for their business. And I believe that consumers have the right to decide whether or not they patronize that business. And if they don't like what the business is doing, they should take their business somewhere else. Government should not dictate how businesses operate their business. Now, one of the things that I think is very interesting about our current mask mandate is that 3 days prior to the incumbent governor issuing that mask mandate, he was asked and said, I have no plans to issue a mask mandate. Within 3 days, he evidently met with representatives of big box retailers in the state of Indiana who did not want to compete with other businesses that didn't mandate masks. So he came out with a mask mandate. I do not agree with government mandating anything of that nature. I don't agree with government closing businesses. I absolutely believe that when government closes churches, it's a violation of the First Amendment. I also do not agree with the statewide closing of schools. I believe that each school district should make that determination based on the situation in their school district, not a statewide mandate by one man. And I do not agree with the idea of mandating vaccines by government. Now, here again, I agree with you, Jeremy, that if they say no shirt, no shoes, no mask, no service, that is that business owner's right to do so. And if it causes them to not be able to make a profit because the majority of people don't want to go to a business that requires a mask, then they have to deal with the consequences of their decision. But when government mandates that everybody has to do the same thing, then government is dictating consequences, and in this case, to 6.8 million people. And I don't believe that one man should ever have the authority to dictate consequences to 6.8 million people.
Thank you, Donald. Our next question comes from Matthew of DeKalb County, and I'm going to add a couple things to it as well. Reform our criminal justice system and invigorate our economy through decriminalization and legalization of all forms of cannabis in Indiana. This was taken directly from your website. I am pro legalization of cannabis and wish it would just be legal on the federal level as well. You have talked about the legalization of medical marijuana. Will you also work toward the legalization of recreational marijuana as well as medicinal? And could you also comment on the agricultural and economic benefits to Indiana should that happen?
Okay, so let's try to break this down a little bit. First of all, we have an opioid crisis in this state. And we need to make sure that people who need pain management options, whether that pain is physical, emotional, mental, it doesn't matter. It has been a proven fact that cannabis is a more effective and safer method for people to deal with pain management, with the effects of chemotherapy and many other medical situations. And so we need to make sure that we get that done for people as soon as possible. I also believe that cannabis in all its forms need to be legalized and decriminalized right away. One of the things that we need to do in our criminal justice system is stop incarcerating people for victimless crimes. And, pardon me, we can reduce our state budget. We can improve the recidivism rates. We can do many things by decriminalizing cannabis. We will be able to improve the number of people who are employed by expunging the records of people who have been convicted of nonviolent cannabis-related crimes. So I am 100% committed to doing both. And I also am committed to making sure that family farmers can grow it, new manufacturing in Indiana, new plants, Hoosier-owned businesses can manufacture, have new retail. This will create a lot of new jobs. And here again, always make certain that you remember something, folks. Government doesn't create jobs, you do. And so when we open up the market for cannabis through cannabis reform, we will be creating opportunities for Hoosiers to improve their economic situation, to improve their medical situation. Many people talk about the value of hemp as a substitute for plastics and other environmental issues that can be addressed using hemp. This is something that can provide a tremendous amount, a broad base of opportunity in Indiana.
Thank you, Donald. We're going to shift gears a little bit and go into the field of education now. Priscilla from Carroll County asked several questions. I'm going to ask you to address two of them. Priscilla says that she's a conservative Christian who works in the early childhood education field. People are wondering, if you cut taxes, how would the public schools be funded?
Well, again, I think it's very, and we talked about this earlier, and I think it's very clear that we don't have to worry about how to fund the necessary functions of government. And as long as the state constitution says that the state of Indiana will provide tuition-free common schools in the state of Indiana, then we have a responsibility to make sure that gets done. What we have to do is cut all the other pork and all the fraud, waste, and abuse out of state government, and then reallocate the money that is collected to the things that need to be addressed. The idea that government says to you, well, we can't cut your property taxes because that's how we pay for schools. Well, you don't have to do it that way. You choose to do it that way. You could use sales taxes to pay for schools. There are other means of collecting revenue. You don't have to use property taxes, especially if we decide we're going to get rid of property taxes. So again, it's not a one or the other. It's government needs to stop lying to us and telling us we can't give you your money because we've got to use it for this. They have the option of reallocating funds. They do it all the time for their benefit. They need to start doing it for your benefit.
Thank you, Donald. Patricia from Carroll County also asks, are you for school choice, i.e. homeschooling, charter schools, online schools, private schools, however parents want to educate their own children?
Absolutely. So let me make this very clear. I believe that we have over-politicized our children and education in the state of Indiana for entirely too long. Anytime we try to hold government accountable, they try to use children as a shield to keep from having to do what they ought to do, and that needs to stop. Parents should and will, under a Rainwater administration, be given the ability to make the choices in how their children are educated. You should have maximum opportunity and maximum choice for your child's education, because every child in the state of Indiana is unique. Every child has unique strengths, weaknesses, desires, interests, and their educational opportunities should be tailored to maximize their experience, not a one-size-fits-all, government-mandated social engineering opportunity in order to get compliance when they get older. We need to put a stop to that. We need to get education back into the hands of parents, and we need to do it now.
Thank you, Donald. I've not had a chance to do this yet, but I'm going to ask you a follow-up question from the chat, going back to the cannabis issue.
Yes.
This question is from Chris of Boone County. He asks, when it comes to cannabis, whether recreational or medicinal, in legalized states, the taxes are almost 50% the cost of the product. Is that something that you stand behind, or are you more supportive of free market type of legalization?
Well, Chris, that's a great question. And I'm going to tell you that, first of all, I am not a fan of what I grew up referring to as the sin taxes, right? The excise taxes placed on cigarettes, alcohol, cannabis. These excise taxes are, first of all, unfairly and disproportionately burdensome on lower income Hoosiers, because traditionally lower income Hoosiers are adversely affected by any and all taxes. Because let's face it, somebody with $100 who pays $1 isn't as affected as somebody with $10 who pays $1. So when you put an excise tax on, I don't care if it's cigarettes, alcohol, gasoline, for goodness sake, and if you didn't know, you pay about 62, 64, maybe 65 cents now a gallon in excise taxes on gasoline. But these taxes are disproportionately burdensome on middle and lower income Hoosiers. So I am not at all in favor of these excise taxes. We have a 7% sales tax in the state of Indiana. My Lieutenant Governor, William Henry, and I will work as hard as we can to convince the General Assembly to keep the taxes as low as possible on all of those items. We need to do away with these repressive excise taxes and ensure that Hoosiers are treated fairly by a tax system that doesn't overburden people unnecessarily.
Thank you for that follow-up, Donald. We're going to shift gears once again, and we're going to go into one of your favorite subjects, the Second Amendment. There are going to be a couple questions here and also one on police reform. The question initially comes from Mary of Montgomery County. She says, if you are pro-constitutional carry and want to implement that in Indiana, would the process for purchasing firearms remain the same? How do you make it safer for those who shouldn't have guns?
Well, first of all, when we talk about licensing, that's a different conversation than purchase. And for now, the process for purchase would remain the same. Constitutional carry, in my opinion, is a natural extension of your Second Amendment rights, just like not having your church shut down is a natural extension of your First Amendment rights. So while I'm on the subject, a lot of people say, well, if we do constitutional carry, how will I get reciprocal rights in states that offer reciprocal rights but would require a permit? And we will still offer the lifetime permit and the 5-year permit, for anyone who wants to get those permits so they can have reciprocal rights in other states. But the idea behind constitutional carry is that if you're in the state of Indiana, you are carrying a firearm because you have a constitutional right to do so. I was actually speaking to a police officer earlier this week, and we were talking about constitutional carry. And he said police officers should support constitutional carry because we're all taught that when you walk up on somebody, you should always assume they're carrying a firearm. You should never assume somebody isn't. So constitutional carry, I believe, is an important thing that we need to get passed in the state of Indiana in 2021. Because I will also tell you that based on my research, the majority of mass shootings occur in gun-free zones. The best way to deter someone is for them to fear that everybody in the room they're walking into has a gun too.
Donald, we have a quick follow-up on that that issue that you just discussed. It's from Thomas Peck. He wants to know, so would you then charge for those permits? And would we allow citizens of other states to carry without a permit in Indiana?
Well, first and foremost, I would like to see us do away with the fees for the permits. We've done away with the fee for the 5-year permit. And I think we should do away with the fee for the lifetime license permit. And I would be open to discussion about citizens of other states carrying without a permit inside of Indiana. I would love to hear what both people, for example, like Guy Relford, who is the preeminent Second Amendment attorney here in Hamilton County, does a lot of work with the General Assembly. I would love to hear what people have to say about that, because to be honest with you, I've been so focused on Hoosiers' Second Amendment rights, I really hadn't given that a lot of thought before just now.
Okay, Thomas also wants to know if he's going to get his $75 back.
Well, I would suggest you discuss that with Eric J. Holcomb.
Thank you, Donald. One more question in the same vein. This is from Stoney of Johnson County. He says, Mr. Rainwater, I am a military veteran, former candidate for Johnson County Sheriff, and recently retired Indiana State Police officer. Can you explain what your position is on defunding the state police department and police reform in general?
Well, Stoney, I'm a veteran as well. And as a matter of fact, some of you may know, some of you may not. My grandfather was a police officer in Kentucky. My father, before he moved here to Indiana, was a police officer for a few years in Kentucky. I am a staunch supporter of both our military and our police and their role in protecting the rights of individuals. So whenever I hear somebody talk about defunding the police, not only does it make me a little nauseous, because I believe that we need to have in a law and order society, a society of laws, not a society of men. We need to have a way to ensure that we are protecting the rights of individuals, both in person and in their property. And I believe that the police departments have a very important role in that.
Thank you, Donald. I know you've answered this question 1,000 times. It's on your website. Staff has answered it for you innumerable times. But can you state in no uncertain terms, Jonathan from Hamilton County wants to know, are you pro-life and are you for the defunding of Planned Parenthood?
Okay, so Jonathan, I am a pro-life libertarian. And as far as what we will say is, I want to make this a very broad, definitive statement. I don't believe government should be funding any private charitable organizations. Every private charitable organization should be required to fundraise on their own. I think one of the great success stories in private charitable organizations is Goodwill Industries. Several years ago, I was looking into Goodwill Industries and found out that 97% of their funding is self-generated. They get 3% in government grants, and it's because the government gives it to them, not because they ask for it. And so I believe very firmly that all private nonprofit organizations should be self-funded. They should not be funded by government. You have a right to take the money that you have earned and donate it where you see fit. Government shouldn't take it from you and put it where they see fit.
Thank you, Donald. Hang on, here we go, I got it. This is an important question on November 4th for you. And it has to do with how to govern and how you plan on governing and how you can govern. This question is from Virgil from Noble County. He says, what are your plans when the General Assembly fights against your proposals? Will you allow or make the general public vote for laws like some other states do when hitting a wall with the General Assembly? Will you push for reform for referendum laws in Indiana?
Well, Virgil, that's a great question, and there are a couple of important points there. And so let's first of all talk about ballot initiatives, recalls, and referendums. I believe that, first of all, Jefferson said that when people fear the government, there is tyranny, but when the government fear the people, there is liberty. And I believe that we live in a situation right now in the state of Indiana where the government, especially the governor at this point, has no fear of the people. That is a problem. And one of the ways that we can put the power of government back in the people's hands and put the fear of the people back in the government is to initiate a recall process whereby when a government official says he's going to do things during campaign season, and then when he gets into office, he governs in an entirely different way, the people can go out and get petition signatures, come back and vote that person out of office and put somebody new in who will do as they are supposed to do. I also believe in the value of ballot initiatives, where if your elected representatives refuse to pass legislation that the people want to have passed, the people can go out and get enough petition signatures to have that issue put on a ballot for everybody to vote on. Now, we don't want everything done that way. Obviously, we want to save those things for times when government has run amok and gone off on its own road. But these are things that help to ensure that the people continue to have a voice in their government between election day and election day. Because right now, we don't have that in Indiana. When you elect somebody for 4 years, you're stuck with them for 4 years, and we need to fix that.
Thank you, Donald. I think it's almost 6:45. We've got time for a couple more questions, and then I'll ask you to make a closing statement, okay?
Absolutely.
This question is from AJ, who we met the other day at the county chairs meeting, a great supporter of yours.
Yes.
He wants to know about your stance on unions. I have heard Mr. Rainwater speak on his stance regarding unions and his view that the government should not get involved in any agreement made between an employee or group of employees and their employers. The state of Indiana is currently a right to work state. Does Mr. Rainwater support the right to work legislation? Why or why not?
Well, let me put it to you this way. I believe that every transaction between two people or between a group of people is between those people and nobody else. One of the foundations of freedom is that you and I can get together and we can negotiate a contract. And the only time we need to get government involved is if there's a dispute regarding the conditions of the contract and whether or not we have both fulfilled our conditions of the contract. So, plain and simple, if you're an employer and I want to work for you, I need to negotiate the conditions of my employment with you, and the government should have nothing to say about it. If you're a bad employer, people aren't going to want to work for you. If you're a good employer, people will want to work for you. And if you're a bad employee, an employer should be able to terminate that relationship based on the conditions that that relationship was contractually agreed to in the first place. Now, if a group of people decide to collectively negotiate with a business owner, and the business owner willingly decides to negotiate with that group of people, here again, that is a private transaction. Government should have nothing to do with it unless there is a dispute as to whether or not both parties have fulfilled the contract. And I think that's pretty straightforward. And I think that pretty well sums up how I feel the relationship between an employer and employee or employees should be conducted.
Thank you, Donald. I'm going to take a liberty because it didn't come up in the.
Can I?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I apologize, but I saw something here that I just want a real quick answer just because it's near and dear to my heart.
Go right ahead, sir.
If I may. I apologize, folks, but Josh here from Wayne County wants to know what my stance is on hunting and fishing licenses. And I'll tell you right now, I don't think Daniel Boone ever had to apply for a hunting license, and I don't think you should either. I don't think you should have to apply for a fishing license. One of the things that I've said, and I believe this applies across the board. Now, somebody may be able to give me a valid time when this doesn't apply, and I will be more than willing to say, oh, I was wrong. Here's the exception that proves the rule. But as far as I'm concerned, whenever government says, oh, guess what? Here's a free fishing day, or we're going to give you a free hunting day where you don't need a license, or if you don't need it, then you don't need it. We don't need licenses. If you're 16 years old, you don't need a license to fish. But if you're 60, you do. That makes no sense. That's not logical. It's just an attempt to get more money out of you. That's all it is. And we need to do away with those things. So thank you, Josh, because that's a pet peeve of mine, because I like to fish.
Well, Donald, since you were speaking about licensing, let's come back to the question I was going to ask before you decided to ask that one. And this is a different kind of licensing, but it's still licensing. For the final question of the evening, before you give your final closing statement, can you speak about your ideas about occupational licensing in the state of Indiana?
Yes, and this is here again. I think this is a very important part of that economic foundation in Indiana that we have let government erode. I don't believe that a group of people in the Indiana General Assembly have any business determining what a young person or any person should have to do to become a hairdresser or a barber or a massage therapist. These occupations, in my opinion, should have private associations that you can join and that decide on their own, here are the standards that we're going to set for our occupational association. And if you want to be certified by our occupational association, then you need to meet these requirements. And then you choose to either join that association or hang a shingle out that says, my name's Don the Barber, and if you choose to come to me, whatever haircut you get is what you get. Now, as a consumer, you then have the authority and the responsibility to decide for yourself. Do I want to go to the certified hairdresser, or do I want to go get my hair cut by the bald guy? That's up to you. And there are exceptions. I believe that we need to have more stringent requirements for doctors. Obviously, though, if you look at lawyers, the Bar Association, while it's a quasi-government agency, it's still kind of out there on its own doing its own thing. So if lawyers can do it, I think hairdressers, acupuncturists, real estate agents, they should be able to set their own. Bartenders. So that's somebody just popped up. Should bartenders be licensed? Let me tell you something. If bartenders need to be licensed, then it should be a private certification, because when you walk into a bar, you're deciding what level of risk you want to take. And if that guy gives you a bad drink, and let me be honest with you, I don't think a bartender should be held responsible or accountable for my inability to know when to stop drinking. That's personal responsibility, folks. And if we want individual rights, we have to assume individual responsibilities too. And so I am 100%, yes, Thomas, just like a guild system. I believe we need that, not government telling us what we have to do and then taking more money from us in order to do it.
Thank you, Donald, and thank you for a wonderful evening of questions and answers from your supporters and people all over the state of Indiana. This has been a great campaign to date. We've got 3 more solid weeks of work to do. So with the next 5 or 6 minutes, I just ask you for your general feelings on the campaign. Where are we going from here? And how much fun have you been having?
Well, so let me first say this. I am overcome by the type of support that we have been getting, especially over the last month and a half, 2 months. I don't know whether you're aware of it or not, folks, but there are supporters of our campaign who have gone out with their own money and bought and put up billboards on state highways and interstates here in Indiana to advertise our campaign. I do not recall ever seeing candidates with billboards like this. I'm sure it's been done, but the fact that our supporters have been so enthusiastic about getting the word out, yard signs, large 4x8 signs, the billboards, the fact that people tell me I've talked to 15 people in the last week and they're all going to vote for you. This is tremendous. And it's a testament, not to me, but to the fact that Hoosiers want limited government and they want their individual rights protected. And they know that the status quo of big government and big spending and big taxation and big bureaucracy isn't going to cut it anymore. And so I am just thrilled and honored. And to be very honest with you, I feel like it's a tremendous amount of responsibility to make sure that we do everything that we can to win this election on November 3rd, so that we can give the citizens of the state of Indiana the government that they both want, need, and deserve. So thank you very much. I really appreciate everybody taking the time to spend the last hour with us. We hope to be able to do this again soon, and hope that you will be able to join us again soon. Thank you so much. And please remember that your vote belongs to you, nobody else. And no one has the right to tell you that voting your conscience is a wasted vote, because the only wasted vote is the one that you cast that you don't really mean. Thank you so much. Sam, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Donald. I want to thank everybody also for coming on this call tonight. Hopefully, as John said, we will do it again. We have a little over, I forget what the count was, couple, 3 weeks until election day. We've got a wonderful staff working on this campaign. We've got 14 to 15 people working day and night just on the staff alone. We've got county chairs all over the state working on the campaign day and night. We've got thousands of volunteers working. We're doing the best we can and everything we could possibly do to get Donald Rainwater elected the next governor of Indiana. Thanks a lot for your time, everybody. Hopefully we'll do this again. We've got a couple major announcements coming out next week, and also a debate on the 20th. Please tune in to see Donald Rainwater debate his old party opponents October 20th from 7 to 8 p.m. on the local PBS television station in your city or online. Thanks, everybody, and good night from the Rainwater campaign. Take care.